Today I'm sharing an anti-tutorial, how I designed this very t-shirt and came up with the pattern for it. Not step-by-step rules, but the design process so that you can start making your own puff granny square garments. We're gonna be taking these structured granny squares using a puff stitch to create an oversized t-shirt, but this is gonna be anything but just another boxy shape. I am using a t-shirt design that I came up with and then recut into a toile, which is just this muslin fabric, so that you can really clearly see kind of what we're doing. I had estimated the amount of granny squares that I might need. I guessed around 40, and I decided I wanted to do a striped motif. I did 8 of each color, but then I got a little bit lazy and only did only 5 of the light pink, so we'll see if we need more. The first step is really to start laying things out and try to see how much of the t-shirt we can just cover as is with the pieces that we have, starting with generally the most basic shape. It's always good to start with the things that are hardest to fix and most important to get right, so the neckline was first up. On a first pass, this neckline looks too wide. So I'm going to try this again with one of these colors centered. Is that enough space to get your head through? Looks a little tight. So maybe the solution's actually on the back. And if I flip this over, the only things I really need to have stay in place are these two here. In order to expand the neckline and to reflect the fact that the back of the garment is a little bit wider, which you would expect, I'm offsetting the squares and using what I thought was originally going to be the pattern on the front on the back to see how that will line up. The neckline and the sleeves are undoubtedly the trickiest part of this. So I'm going to start with kind of that back shoulder piece here, and I'm going to join these pieces together so that I can start taking a look and seeing if this is going to fit the way I want it to. I've already come up with kind of what I want my joining stitch to be. It's going to be a slip stitch through the outer edge of each of the stitches so that it looks like they're just kind of floating next to each other and is pretty much invisible. Yes, I'm testing if they're coming together, but also it's like, why not start building the piece as we go? Starting with the neckline because it will dictate the way everything else lines up on the pattern. We generally want the squares to be joined evenly and in even stripes. I had that back that I joined together, and then I have these little over-the-shoulder pieces. So I just want to line up the rest of the squares and make sure the front's gonna look fairly cohesive. And now we should give it a little try on. What I'm testing right now is to see if my head fits through the hole, which it does. I think this is gonna be a really comfortable neckline. So this is a great foundation. We're off to a really, really good start. If you look at how I've joined this back neckline, suddenly I can kind of squeeze this into almost the full space here so that the pieces do start lining up, which will make sure our sleeves end up being the same length. But what it does mean is that the back is going to be a little bit wider than the front, which is actually very normal when you're dealing with the top of the shoulders, which is exciting. We're on a quest to get to the sleeves, the next hardest part. So that means joining lots of squares to try to finish that shoulder and start reaching the outside of that sleeve. And as soon as that's done, you guessed it, we're trying it on. It's always good to keep kind of double checking, popping it on throughout to just make sure it's accomplishing what we want it to. When we think about sleeves, especially in granny square garments, they often end up as just rectangles, but that can actually create a lot of tension at the shoulder line and in the underarm. But if you take a square like this and you fold it in half, it becomes a bit of a diamond shape, which is something called a gusset and is used in different places of a garment to give you a little bit more space and shaping. So in the crotch, in the underarm, so there's more mobility. So this is the back of the sleeve, the front of the sleeve. So I'm going to try it right here to connect the underarm to the back and allow you some more movement without adding too much volume to the sleeve. So when I was laying it out flat, it looked like if I put a gusset right there, that should give me some nice shaping. I think I still need one more length for the sleeve if I'm really being true to the piece that I'm copying. So I'll show you how it fits here. Yeah, so it's meant to hit right at about the elbow and then have this little drop shoulder. I have one side of the gusset, and then I'm actually going to turn everything inside out, fold this square so that it's now this triangular shape, and then attach it on the other side. I should be able to check it. Is the armhole still only be those 4 squares? I love the colors on this, but here's where, you know, things don't quite meet expectations. Since I did offset this versus the initial plan, I'm gonna need one more row of pink here, which is fine. But if you remember from my stacks earlier, that's the only color that I didn't make 8 squares in. So I think I need two more at least. So I'm gonna do that real quick. Both sleeves are gusseted with this little piece underneath here, and I think it's looking fantastic. Now that that tricky part of the sleeve and the neckline is done, we can just go back to our flat piece to find out how to add the rest of the squares. For the rest of the body, it should be pretty straightforward. Down to there, and just start kind of laying out where the squares are gonna be. Now, I did say that I had 8 per color, and if I go 1, 2, 3, 4, there's already 2 on the back, so that's 6, 7, so I'm gonna need more than I had initially made. Okay, so we're almost done with the body. Oh, and I ran out of yarn for this color, but luckily I found like just enough to get it finished. Here is where we're at the moment. This is the length it's gonna be. I wanna be able to just kind of tuck it in and blouse it, and that's great. We're joining the final body pieces together. Francis has given the pattern his seat of approval. Front and the back are in one solid piece. I didn't join the sides quite yet because I wanted to see how we're gonna join this underarm piece. Adding that little diamond or gusset piece under the arm was always going to be an interesting join situation, so I decided to try it 2 different ways. On one side, with the entire piece evenly joined to another full granny square down the side, and then the second option was joined unevenly, so it only takes up half of the length of a granny square on the side. Okay, the first side is done, and I just wanted to check, and it is looking so amazing and so comfortable. The uneven half a join ended up looking better, so I went with that and made sure to use my stitch markers to indicate exactly how much of the granny square I was going to be joining to, so that it was even on both sides. And since this gusset piece is joining to only half of the larger square, I'm trying to fit 2 stitches on this side for every 1 stitch over here. I just go through each stitch twice and do a really simple little slip stitch just through those outer loops. So this is the first time that I'm filming the whole making of the pattern on camera, and it's really scary. Whether you're designing something without a pattern, just making something, we all go through those stages of wondering if it's gonna work, being uncertain and unsure. And so I've had it mapped out in my head, but I haven't actually done it yet. I think this is a really relatable feeling when you're in the middle of a project and you're like, is this going to work? Have I, spent all this time and it's not gonna fit, or something like that? Drop in the comments if you can relate, but I just wanted to let you know that that feeling is very universal. Okay, so full t-shirt try on. This is so soft. It does have a little bit of weight to it, but I'm not mad at this at all. Naturally, your squares are gonna have a little bit of like a bubble to them, but that'll relax. I think the sleeve shape is actually kind of fantastic. The fit is boxy without being shapeless, which is exactly what we are going for. So the next big thing to tackle is the collar. So I'm going to use the same stitch here, but slightly rounding the corners because this will naturally help it form a nice round shape. We covered that flat circle math in our hyperbolic crochet ruffles video. We're going to use some of our flat circle math to decrease it in a way that will make it so it lays flat as we're wearing it. As I'm doing a lot of this, I'm trying to think about how in the next step I'm going to accomplish a decrease. using my puff stitch. So I think the next round we might need to do a little bit more testing because I don't know how that's gonna work. And instead of putting a puff stitch in the corner like here, I think I'm actually gonna skip this corner and join it in here, because then that's gonna start really distributing that curve a little bit more. Yeah, and there we are. It's much, much nicer here than it was leaving that space open. So there really is a ton of trial and error when I'm doing this. It's not like I have it totally dialed in all of the time for everything. Give it a little clip. And we could jump in to do the second round of the collar, but I think we really should pop it on, since again, we're just kind of testing as we go to see how that shape is working. By skipping that stitch in the back here, we really have rounded out the back of that shoulder, which is really nice, but it still looks like the front is pretty square and boxy. Our next step is to try to round out that front bit. So for our flat circle math, you want to decrease on a multiple of 6. We have 28. We want to decrease every 6 stitches, which means we should decrease roughly like 4.6 times or 5 times. We're going to start our second round with that in mind. If you're wondering why I care so much about the math of the collar, it's really because collars are hard enough on their own, let alone trying to get them to lay flat. So let's take a look and see. I'm a teeny bit worried because I think the back is looking gorgeous, and I feel like I need to go back and undo this and then not have this corner one here, and then our shaping would be a lot better. So I think that's what I'm gonna have to do. Unravel time. So I'm gonna unravel to that first corner. But instead of adding a puff, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do that first little, where I kind of like do a weird double crochet thing to bring it all together, and then do the puff stitch in the second hole there. And see, we've already tightened it up a bit, and I think it's looking better. Already it's looking curvier. Yeah, that's sitting a lot nicer. So round 2 is done. This is the reality of making your own patterns, trying to figure out how to turn a square into a circle. I was doing the increases faster on the second round, and it's really starting to curve, especially at that bottom. Look how gorgeous. This top part, not quite. But I'm wondering if on that very first round, I had found a way to make it a multiple of 6. Who said you'd never do math in art? Okay, so you have 21. I reduce every 6 stitches. I'm reducing 3 times. And you can already see when you hold it up with a little bit of weight too, that the collar is curving really, really nicely. So even though I'm nitpicking about how curved, it's laying really, really flat, which is exactly what we want. We've gotten down to our multiple of 6 on the collar, but on this round, it's like, it's a little bit snug around my head. It's too tight. I'd say 18, too small. I'm gonna take it all apart again, just the collar, and do it one more time. I took it back up to 30 last night. I think this is proof that things, despite popular opinion, don't always work out the first time. Yes, I could have figured this out and then just told you, you know, in a pattern, do this because it makes it rounder or something, but I think there's so much more value in watching the questions unfold and getting to see, you know, how you actually troubleshoot these types of issues. So I did where I increased to 30 and then did the reduction by every 6 stitches for 3 rounds. If you look at how it's actually laying on top of my t-shirt collar underneath, it actually is kind of reflecting the shape of that. I could stop here, but I'm not going to. I want this to feel like a true sweater t-shirt collar, which means it needs to be double-sided. And while I think in knitting a lot, people do collars that are folded over, I don't think we do it quite enough in crochet. And by doing those 3 rounds back in, you'll see a contrasting color through, which I think will look really cool. And then make it so when this is just the only thing against my skin, it's really comfy. So I'm not getting like an edge here, I'm actually getting something that's folded and soft up against my neck, which if I'm going for like a t-shirt feel, comfort is paramount. I'm going to do 3 more rounds to fold over the collar, not do any decreases the first round. So just give it a matching round. And then I'm going to increase every 6 stitches. So basically reverse exactly what I just did to try to then force a different circle shape. But this is fun, right? To actually see the problems. I just want to wear this already. It's just extra motivation to get it done. And if you've enjoyed this process of crocheting with me, I do have a crochet community called the Stitch Lab. Check out the link below. I would love to crochet with you there. And since I did about a million color changes on this, I'm just gonna go through and weave in some ends quickly. All of the back sides of the puffs you don't see, so you can just hide your extra yarn strands as you're changing colors really easily and no one will know they're there. Look on this round how curvy she got just by doing one more round like that. This is gonna fold in, fold over. So I just finished this second round and you can already see, look at it, it's expanding, but as soon as we actually let it curl, it just naturally wants to do that. And again, every 6 stitches do an increase. Next round is done. I want to try it on and just see how we're looking. It's gonna look super funky just like this. And remember, we know that because we want it to curl. So if I do that, see, look, it just naturally finds its edge there and is so nice and puffy. So I left myself a really, really long tail there in order to be able to start joining this all together. What I want to do at multiple points throughout the collar, I want to evenly distribute this because it may not perfectly align with that original shape. Hopefully my fashion knowledge will help a little bit, because something called a twisted collar, where basically the inside edge doesn't match up to the outside edge, is really common. Our last round, it's a circle, has nothing to do with the way that original collar shape was distributed. So we need to make sure that we're lining up certain points. We should have the same amount of clusters, but not in the same places. I'm gonna take my handy dandy little stitch markers and I'm just gonna put them in key places around the collar of the t-shirt to make sure that everything's lining up. And I think this is actually gonna be a lot easier to do if it's inside out. So I'm gonna take this outer edge, I know my fold is this orange one here, and I'm gonna line, it's a double cluster, up with what is the center back line of my garment. And then I'm just gonna take a stitch marker to just hold that in place. And then I'm gonna do the same with the very front center, since that's probably also the most important place to make sure that everything isn't twisted. And we're gonna fold this over, find that top bit. Or actually, where's the center of this one? Right here. And since I'm doing it from the inside, I also don't have to worry about anything showing through and stretching anything out. Turn it back to the outside. It also looks like it's sitting really nicely. What's weird here is that I have the kind of like chain ends of the stitches, and then I have the puff stitches here. I'm gonna see if I can kind of hook it up with this line of the top puff stitches, so I just have something a little bit easier to work through. Like all good things in crochet, we're just gonna wing it a bit. But this corner is actually gonna be really important, that we get everything nice and tight to that true corner of where all of the pieces join together, because that is really gonna help round out our collar. Take a look on the other side, and the effect's really nice. You're just getting that little bit of blue through. So I'm just gonna keep going around, but I'm already really happy that I have this marker in here, because otherwise who knows how these would be distributed. Part way around, and I've already figured out that having the stitch markers in the corners, see all the way down here is where it needs to go. Since I did use matching yarn for that first round, it's kind of hard to see where those are. Maybe I should have used a different color. I'm kind of grabbing the back loop on the front pieces, and then I'm grabbing just the entire top of the back pieces, but not an exact science. For now, I'm coming up with the shape and then the math to make sure everything's perfect, that I know exactly how you have to distribute the joins and things like that. Comes later. Maybe I should do more of these behind the scenes, what the pattern development process looks like. What do you think? You tell me. At some point, I'm gonna have to remember all of this, and it's usually like a what the heck was I thinking moment. But since I'm explaining it to you, I can just go back and watch this and be like, oh yeah, that's what I was thinking, rather than having to just guess. So if you're enjoying this, let me know, hit that like button. I think I might actually have found a purpose for this in my life too. Oh, whoa, I'm almost done. I didn't even notice. Okay, so I'm gonna show you something that's a little bit ugly at the moment. This is my rather ugly joining stitch. You can see the separate line here all the way around, and it should look pretty smooth. It's looking so good. Okay, we have to try it on. Ditching this for a second. Moment of truth. Okay, so she's not laying absolutely perfectly flat. This looks like it kind of extends a bit more. So the collar is done, and now it's time to take it apart and do it over again. Before you freak out, let me explain why. Thinking like a designer here, it's really hard to see where the collar starts when you're joining it back together if that first round on the collar is the same color yarn. So if I just made it a different color, not only will you be able to see better where the collar is, but that's also a great tip for somebody who's walking through a pattern to make it a lot easier. If that's a contrast color, you know exactly where it's gonna line up. So if I was just making a sweater, I would stop here, but I'm not just making a sweater. I'm making a pattern that I want other people to be able to enjoy as well. And so these little things are things that it's worth it to me to do. So even though yes, it's joined together, and yes, I did weave in the ends, I should have known better, it's time to do this one more time. So I redid the whole thing. It's a bit of the Goldilocks methodology here of, 18 stitches was too tight, pushing it out to 30 was too big, and so now I've got it absolutely perfect. Really does matter when you're creating a pattern that not only you want to be fun to make, but also fun to wear. I haven't tried it on yet, so I'm really excited to show you. We still have that double fold over with the color peeking through. Being a perfectionist with this kind of stuff, I think only helps you in terms of pattern making. For a moment, I was contemplating not changing everything, then I was like, well, what the heck am I thinking? This sits a lot flatter on the sides. I still think it's gonna stretch out a little bit and be a little less square, but it really rounds nicely around the collar, feels incredibly comfortable, and the joining process is a million times easier because you can see I have a contrast color to demonstrate to you there. From a pattern making perspective, this is a much better choice. So now that I've gone in and Goldilocks the collar for the final time, I'm now gonna do the hem on the sleeves and the waistband. One of the reasons we're gonna do one more final puff is the same reason why you do a border stitch on a granny square blanket, and it's because you do have all these pieces you've joined together, and you hope everything is perfect and even, but in reality it probably isn't. So just one more round to create a border, which in this case we're gonna do with the puff stitch, will really make it smooth and make all those pieces just look like they're one, rather than like you have seamed together a bunch of granny squares. I'm just gonna go around and do a puff stitch in every space here. Now we did start this out as a pattern where we're just trying to like replicate an existing piece. It's a lot more straightforward when it's more about like, if I do this, does this match what I'm looking at, versus does this give the effect that I'm looking for, which I think becomes more of the designer side of things. But in this case, it's more of a design idea I had in my head. So much more subjective in terms of whether you've accomplished that or not. Okay, so drop in the comments what you thought of this process. It's super fancy schmancy reveal time, which means I have put back on our original little prototype toile to see how it measures up. I haven't fully woven in all the ends yet, but we'll get there. Dang. It's just so like spot on. You can't even really see the toile underneath. It is just barely out the edge of the sleeves. I think it's just about perfect. And let's step back a minute so you can see the hem, but it fits better without this underneath because this stuff is so stiff. Even after all of that, I still made one more change. the gusset, that square piece, had been joined to about half the space it was supposed to fill. So I took away some rounds until it perfectly evenly fit there. And see, what you get is that same really nice drape in shape, but without too much fabric when you're designing things. I love wearing them around and then seeing like what irritates me and then changing it, because then that's how you get to like the perfect pieces that you're gonna absolutely love to wear. Let me know in the comments, is this something that you want a pattern for? Make sure you're signed up for my weekly newsletter. It comes out on Wednesdays. I'd love to see what you're working on. If you're part of the Stitch Lab community, make sure you're dropping all of your projects on Wednesdays. I really enjoyed making this and getting to share this process with you. Until next time, I'm Lee. Happy crocheting.